Hey folks, I'm Melhorn. How does the Ugly Stik catfish rod compare to other popular catfish rods? Stay tuned, we're going to talk about it. Well, if you're like me, any of you folks that have fished for catfish have probably owned or wanted to own an Ugly Stik catfish rod. It is a brand that is under the Shakespeare umbrella, and they came up with this in the late 70s. It didn't take long for this brand to take off. They had some innovative commercials that we all watched on our Saturday morning fishing show, and everybody wanted to have an Ugly Stik. Well, as the popularity of this brand grew, they began producing different types of rods for different species. There is an Ugly Stik striper rod, there is an Ugly Stik tiger rod, there is an Ugly Stik tiger light rod. I even have an Ugly Stik roller rod that I use offshore fishing. Now, what made the Ugly Stik catfish rod so popular with so many catfish anglers? Well, the biggest thing was the price. It was very affordable. Another thing, the rod was readily available. You could pick it up in Walmart, Bass Pro Shop, Cabela's. Any of the major sporting goods stores carried these rods. The other thing that made the Ugly Stik catfish rod so popular was its versatility. It was good for a bank angler, a boat angler, somebody who was an experienced catfish fisherman, or somebody that was new to the sport. So, with so many new catfish-specific rods on the market, how does the old Ugly Stik compare to the new ones that are out there? Well, we're going to sit down and make a side-by-side comparison of that workhorse of the catfish world, the Ugly Stik, to the Mac Daddy of all the catfish rods that are out there, the Hellcat from Catch the Fever. First, let's start with the physical characteristics of both rods. The Ugly Stik is a 7-foot, one-piece rod. It's medium heavy power with fast action. It has a foam handle, a trigger grip, and a plastic Fuji reel seat. The Hellcat rod is 7 foot 6 inches, medium power with fast action. It's also a one-piece rod. It has an EVA foam handle, an aluminum reel seat with double locking rings. Now, in my opinion, one of the biggest advantages that the Ugly Stik has over any catfish rod out there is the price. When I bought my rods years ago, they were around $24. Now, while the price has gone up now to around $50, they are still the best deal going for a catfish rod anywhere. Now, the Hellcat comes in at almost 3 times the price, but there are some distinct things with the Hellcat that might make that price increase worth it to you. First, the aluminum reel seat on the Hellcat rod is not only visually appealing, but it is sturdy as a rock. Now, the reel seat on the Ugly Stik is considerably lighter, but one of the problems with the reel seat on the Ugly Stik is it tends to bind. The locking nut that holds your reel on tends to bind up. You have to pry it with a screwdriver to get it loose. And that's one thing that does not happen with the Hellcat aluminum reel seat. Now, while there is no real benefit to a fisherman with the design of the Hellcat reel seat, there are some little visual items in there that really make it appealing. One of the cool things is the way the blank of the rod is visible through the reel seat itself. There's some little cutouts there to where you can actually see the color of the rod through the handle. Now, another little subtle thing there on the reel seat before you put the reel on, the name Hellcat, the brand name, is etched there on the reel seat. Again, these things have really no impact on you catching fish, but they do add a nice design element to the rod. Now, another thing that will drive the cost up on the Hellcat rods are the line guides themselves. They are much sturdier, much nicer, just all around built better than what comes on the Ugly Stik. Paying close attention to the wrapping that is around the guides, it is much more impressive than the Ugly Stik. And another subtle little difference is just holding the rod, feeling the handle, feeling the diameter of it, feeling how big it is and how heavy it is. You can tell there's a little more put into a Hellcat rod. Now, another thing that I really do like about the Ugly Stik is the 7-foot length. The Hellcat rods are slightly longer at 7'6". It's not that big of a deal, but I really don't need that extra length being a fisherman on a boat. Having one that would be slightly shorter, maybe 7 foot or even 6'6", I think for guys that are fishing from boats and especially from kayaks would it be appealing if the Hellcat line ever went with this, and I think it's definitely an advantage for the Ugly Stik catfish rod. Now, another thing that I really like about the Ugly Stik catfish rod, and this is a silly little thing, but it's that little trigger grip thing that is made into the handle. The reason I like this thing, it just feels like you're getting a little more power and a little more whip action when it comes to casting. Now, speaking of casting, as far as casting goes, I do think the Hellcat rods have an advantage when it comes to casting. The Ugly Stik is going to cast great for most people. Like I said, I used it for years and never really said I need more casting ability. With that said, the Hellcat rod is an amazing rod when it comes to slinging weight. Now, I'm sure you're probably asking yourself, well, is a $50 Ugly Stik catfish rod going to catch as big a catfish as a $140 Hellcat rod? Well, the honest answer is yes. There is nothing in the world to stop you from catching any catfish out there in America with an Ugly Stik catfish rod. So now you're probably really confused and going, Dieter, why should I even spend $140 for a Hellcat rod when I can do what I need to do with a $50 Ugly Stik? Well, to be perfectly honest, you probably don't. But the one big difference between an Ugly Stik and a Hellcat rod is the build quality. The Hellcat rod is just a much sturdier, more well-built rod. While both will work, both will catch fish, you do get more bang for your buck with one of these more expensive rods. So the bottom line, is the Ugly Stik catfish rod a good choice for you? Well, obviously that depends on you, your budget, where you fish, and how you're fishing for catfish. As I've said before, I believe the Ugly Stik catfish rod will catch any catfish out there that you encounter. I think for somebody new, trying to figure out whether this is something they want to pursue, move to the next level with, I think the Ugly Stik catfish rod is a great entry-level rod for anglers that want to go chase these whiskered fish. But in the beginning, remember what is most important. Get out there and enjoy the time on the water with your friends, your family, or just by yourself. Well, folks, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Here are a couple more videos that I think you're gonna like. I'd watch that one and then that one. No, do that one first and then that one. I don't know, just watch them both. They're both good.